In any thriving society, in any thriving society, there are certain elements that need to be in place in order for that society to survive. Systems like education, healthcare, energy, security, transportation, these elements need to run smoothly for the citizens to use these services in order to be productive. And all of that gelling together brings you a successful society. Those services are traditionally funded by taxes when the nation's people contribute a certain amount in terms of their income, and those amounts are then obviously collected together, distributed through the various departments, and those funds are used to maintain and expand those services. The problem we have in South Africa is that there are taxpayers paying for these services, but government is not providing. In fact, we're at a point where we're paying double taxes for these very same services and we just don't know about it. In this video, I'm going to show you South Africa's double tax system and what you need to do to fix this. Here are some of the elements that we need for a successful society. I haven't listed them all. I don't have a board big enough, but let's just touch on a few today. Firstly, education. Education is important because it's our education system that develops our scientists, our medical professionals, our law professionals, our commerce professionals, the people in society that bring about innovative solutions for the nation. And when those solutions are good enough, we can export them as well. All right. Education is the basis of all of that. Then we have the healthcare system, a healthy society. There's more components of this, but we'll only focus on basically hospitals and primary care in today's video. Then we have security. We have a huge crime problem in the country, and we need the proper kind of security services, the proper justice system to ensure that a proper punishment is in place for the crime that is being committed. And lastly, electricity, water, and sanitation. These are basic necessities that we need for the comforts of life, whereas water is a necessity for survival. So education, ideally, your first tax, your personal income tax should be paying this. However, we have so many of our middle class have opted to go the route of private education and even homeschooling because of the failure of this education system. The failure to have properly educated and trained individuals, subject matter experts teaching these children, and even more so in areas that have not had formal education before, that have not had structures. We still have schools that are using pit toilets. Okay, after so many years of democracy, we have that. Now, nobody expects 300, 400 years of colonialism and apartheid to be fixed in a short period of time. And nobody expects all of that to be fixed in such a short amount of time. But we don't expect to be going backward. And right now we're at a point where there hasn't been much progress. Okay, the progress has happened in the private sector in terms of private schooling, where people are paying extra. I mean, a lot extra, sometimes 80, 90,000 Rand a year to send your children into primary school, into high school. And that is scary. So you're paying your taxes, your personal income tax, but you're also paying your double tax by sending your children to private school. Imagine if we had good functioning school systems, public school systems, and saving 80, 90,000 Rand a year per child that could go towards you retiring well, could go towards you living more comfortably in a very difficult economic environment. This is a double tax. It's a very, very high price to pay. Next is the healthcare system. Now, I am somebody who's used the public healthcare system before. When I was a child, my dad was a fisherman, and he got my brother and I these rods. And my brother, the bright spark that he is, decided to play with the fishing hooks. And one of the hooks went through my foot. So my parents took me to a government hospital, the very notorious R.K. Khan Hospital back in the 80s. Okay, this was a place. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't super nice as what we see the previous white hospitals were, as the private hospitals currently are now. But they were clean. They were clean sheets. There were facilities. Staff moved with urgency. Obviously, you go through the casualty ward. People have a good attitude to try and help you out because they can see your pain. They can see your suffering. We do not have this now. And we can't put it all on the healthcare workers because they have a very tough environment to work with. Yes, there's some rotten lot of them in there, But if you take that same employee and put them in a private environment, the attitude is different, the environment is different. And government has created a healthcare environment that is a horror to work in. The facilities are horrible. There's shortage of equipment, shortage of supplies. I remember reading recently that Addington Hospital, there was no air conditioning in the surgical theaters. So how are you going to have a sterile environment performing open body surgery? Okay, these are the kind of things that have happened under the current regime. So that's a broken healthcare system. We pay a double tax with our medical aid. Medical aid in South Africa is expensive. We're talking about an 8% inflation, year-on-year inflation on that. Okay, it's very expensive. We get tiny tax breaks, maybe 320 Rand or 319 Rand for the primary member today. And then the secondary members, after the spouse, there's a little less of a tax break. But as somebody who's used public healthcare in the beginning, I wouldn't mind going back to that system. Doesn't have to be as fancy. As long as it's clean and we have committed staff, this is something we can go back to. We can save literally thousands. A decent medical aid, only, or even a basic hospital plan in South Africa is going to cost you around 2,000 Rand. Okay, this is when you are healthy somebody. Imagine if when you have chronic conditions, what are your prices are you going to pay? So 80,000-90,000 a year, maybe another 30,000, or in some cases 80,000-90,000 Rand a year for a family of 4 on medical aid. You're double tax on that. Then is security. I mean, to have a security service from the previous regime have so much of control in the country wasn't right. It was awful, but they were effective at enforcing this awful system. The key thing was that they were effective. All right, what made them effective, and what makes our current security system ineffective? Our borders were secure during apartheid. It's not the same now. Why is that? Okay. Our taxes pay for the police services for the South African Defence Force in the country, and we see that the Defence Force does not have funds. We find that security budgets in South Africa for the public are being reduced, whereas VIP protection, their budgets are being increased. So because of the security system, we are so insecure. We have no faith that if I have to report a crime today, that the police would come to my help. I have private security. I pay around 450 Rand a month for private security. So if I hit a panic button or on my phone or in my property, on my app, private security is going to give me a call. In fact, in my case, I have two. One is a coordinating service, because if you try calling 10111 today, the people don't know their elbow from their ass. Okay, they have no sense of first responders training at all. So I have a coordinating service that I can press a panic button. They'll respond to me anywhere in South Africa, and I have seen them respond to people outside South Africa as well, where the panic button was pressed. They'll give you a call wherever you are and give you assistance, from police to your private security to your medical aid. It's a great coordinating service. So in my case, I'm paying twice. So that's a triple tax there for me and my security. Okay, this is so poor that we have to go the route of private. In fact, government has failed so dismally here that we have a thriving private sector in these. We have one of the best private healthcare systems in the world. I have worked in healthcare, private and public, outside South Africa. And our systems, when I tell them how medical aid works in South Africa, how efficient when it comes to the administration, when it comes to the payment, people are blown away. We have a great private healthcare system. It's expensive, all right? It's very expensive, but that convenience, it's only when you're inconvenienced, that you realize how convenient medical aid is. Electricity. If you're watching this right now and you're load shedding, I mean, I should just stop right here. You know what I'm talking about. If you're not load shedding or haven't heard of load shedding before, Eskom does not have enough. They are not managed properly. My kids ask me at times, why do we live here if there's no lights? I'm like, it wasn't always like this. When I was your age, the lights never went off. Okay? The load shedding, the inefficiency of Eskom is so bad. We're looking at alternate sources. We're looking at solar. We're looking at the lithium batteries. We're looking at generators. We're looking at all kinds of alternate energy to fill the gap that Eskom has. The same with water. After the latest storms in KZN, the repairs could not be done quickly enough. Many of us have gone the route of Jojo tanks. We're harvesting grey water, we're harvesting rainwater. Me personally, I'm buying private drinking water, okay, because I don't trust the quality of the water quality from Amgeni water. So we're looking at alternate water sources here as well. Again, another thriving, bustling industry, private industry that has sprung up because of inefficiencies of government to provide the basic services that we pay for with our taxes, and also we build privately for our water and electricity consumption. But what do you do? What do you fix this? How do you fix this? Before we go to how to fixing it, but let me tell you what's government doing in this section. In fact, what they're doing is they're doing that. Okay, let me tell you how they're doing that. There have been calls to cancel the IEB examination system. Various factions have called for the cancellation of the system because they feel that certain segments of the population are progressing too far ahead than everybody else that are using the government system. People that go to private school and subscribe to the IEB examination system. Then we have the Bella Bill. The Bella Bill is an attack on those of us that homeschool. One of the many reasons why we homeschool is one, the inefficiencies of the government system. Two, children can sometimes have learning disabilities, and to get a child into a school, a specialist school like that is pricey, it's costly. Then you got to look at aftercare. The prices are just out of control. So many of us choose to homeschool because of that, where our children can learn at a certain pace. They can be out of the South African curriculum, where they're not writing South African exams because of the standard of education that has been dismally dropping year upon year. Then we have the Bella Bill that's currently, comments on that closed a couple of weeks ago, where they want every homeschooling parent to be registered with the Department of Education. Fine, we can do that. The problem is they're enforcing the CAPS curriculum on us. Many of us do not want CAPS curriculum. We do not want our children learning subjects like life orientation. I don't even know what life orientation is. I went to public school. We never had this. Okay. We want our children to get into robotics and artificial intelligence as early as possible. Learn about agriculture, how to feed yourself, how to defend yourself, how to grow your own food. Okay, that is why many of us choose to homeschool. And we also want schooling that's more in line with our spiritual beliefs. And the current system is not aligned to that. All right, then we have healthcare. Healthcare. So government believes that we should all have equal access to good healthcare. I believe that also. How they go about it is a different story. All of us should have equal healthcare on the public healthcare system. All right. If you want something nice and extravagant, then we should be able to go to the private healthcare system. But government has messed up the public healthcare system so much that I don't think that they're able to fix it. I don't think that they have any solutions. And the next solution they have is to get onto private healthcare. No, medical aid is a private funding model. But then you have the private hospitals, the private healthcare providers. So they are forcing this NHI, the National Health Insurance, onto private healthcare providers. Now, the government has a reputation of not paying their bills on time. How is it for a small practice for that to happen? We will not be able to choose our primary care provider. So your traditional family GP, that's out of the question if their quota is fixed. All right. It's just a mess. There's an additional tax to this, by the way. Okay, so medical aid can only, or private healthcare can only provide what the NHI doesn't. It's an absolute mess, and they have a surcharge on this. It's additional taxes that will come from your salary, whether you like it or not. If you choose to be on medical aid, you also have to pay this fee. Just like how your taxes are deducted, your NHI insurance is going to be deducted as well. Then there's security. I don't even know about this security situation. The Minister of Police, I mean, what an absolute joke that is. There are no solutions. How do you root out corruption in the SAP and in your local police services? We have the Metro Police in Durban. I think all of your other cities, you have something else. But how do you root out corruption? How do you make sure an individual is not taking a 200 rand bribe? How do you do it? How do you fix the supply chain issues? How do you change the morale in society that people are not feel to take what you have worked for? How do you ensure that rapists get what they deserve and they spend time behind bars? The justice system is flawed. I don't even know how to fix this. I have no suggestions for you. Then there's water and electricity. Eskom wants to charge us as well. All right. So what they're doing is they are proposing a new funding model where we have to pay the basic minimum, let's say 900 Rand, before we even get anything. So on top of that 900 Rand, then the billing starts. So basically, they could be load shedding for 15 days in the month, ongoing, rolling blackouts. You still have to pay your 900 Rand. And for those 15 days that you do get electricity, then you're going to be billed on top of that. All right, another way to inflate those prices. There are areas in KZN where they only want to pay 100 Rand. How is that fair? Inflation is at horrific rates. How is it fair? All right, we can go on and on here. Transportation, the minerals. It's just, there's so much that has been messed up. How do you fix it? Firstly, how do you fix it? What's the first thing you got to do is, one, you got to plan for each of these privately. There are many civil organizations that are standing up to all of these here. NHI and Outer, Solidarity, AfriForum. No matter what you feel about these organizations, these are organizations that are fighting government in the court for these things to be fixed, so we don't have to pay all of these additional taxes, the double tax in this case. There's a triple tax coming. And how much more worse does education have to get till they start charging us on this? Remember, they're doing the whole TV licensing as well. They want a surcharge. The SABC wants a surcharge. If we're paying all of these surcharges here, what are you going to be left with? What are you going to eat? How are you going to build wealth? So the first thing you got to do to fight all of these horrid schemes from government is align yourself with these organizations and try and fight all of these horrid schemes that they're coming up with. The second thing is we got to use our vote properly. We've never had a chance to vote until recently, the last 2 decades or 3 decades or so. I only started voting in my 30s. I wasn't in the country. All right. So you got to use your vote properly. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I am telling you who not to vote for. And this current regime is not somebody or a bunch of people that we should be voting for, because they're stealing, they're looting, and unfortunately, many of us are planning our lives based on decisions that people are making only for their term. And their purpose for this term is to loot and steal and destroy. Okay? So 1, align yourself with the organizations that are fighting these. 2, use your vote wisely and vote for a party that clearly identifies with what you believe in. Go and do some research on the party manifestos. What do they believe in? What are their plans? Most of the top opposition parties, they have plans. Go and look on their websites and find one that you clearly identify with. And lastly, and hopefully it never has to come to this, is 1, you have to secure, or 3, you have to secure an exit strategy. Lloyds of London say that we are going to have another July-style riots like we did last year. Now, if you've lived through that, like I have, it is horrid. It is horrid. They say it's going to be far worse than that. It's horrid when guns are flying. It's horrid when your children have to hit the ground every time they hear a round of bullets. It's horrid when those explosions go about. It's horrid and it's going to get worse. So an exit strategy is something that you'd have to look at. So if and when, hopefully you never have to use it, but you need to plan for it. I mean, we're all about planning in advance. And the reality is you have to plan for an exit strategy from South Africa when it gets that bad. Whether it's to get your family to safety for a short amount of time or even for the long term, but you need a plan. All right, so in the next series of videos, we're going to be breaking each of these down one by one. Okay, we're going to learn about the real taxes that we're going to pay. I just gave you a summary today, and then we'll learn about that a little bit more and try and understand exactly what's going on and what the implications of all of these rules are when it comes to our money.